rights group that we'll call it just for now. What? Oh, okay, I thought, I'm used to it.
Yeah.
The other way. But I can say this off the record.
Now you can say it again.
No, the off the record part, we should make a chair available so that when
That's
Charlotte
kind of
comes
part
out,
of
she
the
said, yeah,
background too. I was like, oh.
she did let us know, originally she wasn't gonna be able to be here, something she's doing in Concord was going into OT overtime, but then it got out earlier, so she's on her way, and so she'll walk in a few minutes late. And she can take the blank chair. Now?
Now you're ready.
Now, that was a dry run, all right.
So meeting call to order at, am I supposed to keep like record of that since I am the clerk?
Thank you for doing that. All right.
You're welcome.
February 22nd meeting called to order, and we can also do a quick introduction of who are our non-voting committee members that are present tonight.
I'm Steve Forney, the town manager.
Thank you.
Greg Jordan, the police chief.
Thank you.
Patty Wands, the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment for the Newmarket School District.
Thank you. We did get
Here
a
in
message
place
from
of our
Todd.
Superintendent, Todd Allen, yes.
Yeah, we're glad you're here. That's
Thank
good.
you. Happy to be here.
That's good. Okay, our first order of business is, as listed on this agenda, was ideas for names of the group. I don't know if people came up with ideas or if this is something we want to put a couple of ideas out there, chit-chat about, think about, and actually move this item to our next meeting so that we have plenty of time to really think about it. Names can tend to stick and take on lives of their own. Charlotte's not walking in here yet, but I can say in her stead that last time she mentioned the idea of 659 forward. We don't need to talk about that or analyze that right now without her here to talk about it, but that was one idea that came up. Did anybody else here mull it over or come up with a name or an idea for the group rather than the lengthy title it has right now, which is Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Human Rights Committee Meeting, Human Rights Committee Group. So I tried to make an acronym out of that, and I
Well, I tried
couldn't.
to, it doesn't work.
Out of that, it doesn't work. I was playing with the word real. I thought real had some substance. So there was racial equity, always what? To get R-E-A-L, but I couldn't come up with an L that really seemed to fit. Last, lives, loves. I don't,
Lovely.
would be. That's what we're here to try and help it move toward. Did you have any ideas, or do you know any names of committees, Steve, from other municipalities?
No, usually they go with Human Rights Commission or...
Human Rights Commission, and that's not a bad thing.
Right.
We might decide that we don't need to do an acronym or a name otherwise, and Human Rights Commission really does encapsulate what Steve sent to us in the first place, which was the charge of the committee. That was one of the big thrusts that kind of repeated in what he told us that we were here to be doing and to be focusing on. So we could probably at least table this for a few minutes and come back to it when Charlotte would be here. I saw people heads nodding when we said Human Rights Committee. Does the chief, or I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Patty.
Patty, okay. I thought of CIA, but okay, Patty. Do either of you have any ideas of names of how you could refer to this committee in a succinct way?
I like the Human Rights Commission, but I just thought of Newmarket Undivided or Newmarket Inclusion Alliance. Those were two that I just had come up with.
Newmarket, what is, say it again?
Newmarket
Inclusion Alliance?
Ooh,
So,
NIA, Newmarket Inclusion Alliance.
ooh. Now, not only did we have heads bobbing, we had noises of
Yeah.
approval.
No, I like alliance because it kind of implies there are going to be different viewpoints, so we're all
Right,
working
right.
toward a
And-
goal.
And inclusion includes everyone, it encompasses all.
Doesn't sound negative.
It sounds probably,
Mhm.
Newmarket Undivided is good, but it can be seen negative. Inclusion Alliance sounds positive.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah, that's really good. And I'm thinking on the school side of it, since we have so many, if you think municipal and school side, I'm always kind of leaning toward when school departments use allied arts instead of
Yeah.
unified arts. I like allied.
Yeah.
And here is Charlotte.
I was just going to ask about 659 forward.
So the first item here, Charlotte, we're glad you're here now. We saved you a seat to Steve's left. Yeah. We were talking about names for the group and how to reference the group.
My only thought was 659 forward. Is 659, a lot of people may not know what that is.
I don't know what it
Because
I don't
It's a
Okay, that's
exchange for Newmarket telephone.
Oh, it's a telephone.
Six,
Newmarket.
That's what.
603,
Okay,
but
it's
659.
Okay.
See, that's exactly what I was thinking, the number
So if
two
you
with cell,
lived here for
with cell
10
phones,
years,
we
you
got
know
know
it's
that,
659.
but, yeah.
Well, 03857.
Forward.
As soon as he said. Wish you weren't here when I thought about that.
That's funny.
She brought up Newmarket Inclusion Alliance.
Well, just to speak to 659 forward a bit, that's kind of like a throwback to Newmarket past, and then forward is like the future. So it's kind of a nice bridge to, I don't know. I like all the names, as you can tell.
Well, the other thing about that is, 659 is a prefix for, new bills as well.
Okay.
Mm. More ideas of discussion here.
You could always mix the two together and have the Newmarket Inclusion Alliance moving the community forward or something like that.
That would get us right back to racial.
As an underneath.
It could be a tagline.
Right, tagline.
It could be a tagline.
Yeah.
Newmarket Inclusion Alliance, moving the community forward.
Yeah, I mean, technically, no matter what the name is, you're still in racial equity inclusion.
Right.
Because that's what the council set up, but you can change your name.
Right. This might be taking it another slight direction. No matter the name, I'm wondering if through some aspect of the school, Todd does such a great job of always bringing in what the school could do, what the school
Sure.
could do. I'm wondering if we settle on a name, we find a name, we agree. I'm wondering if there'd be some way through the school to have students there involved in graphics or computer design or something, come up with some kind of a font or a logo or a look for this thing.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I'm thinking our art department, led by Annette Blake, is the art coordinator, and she's a Newmarket resident, and I believe went through the schools in Newmarket. And my sense is that she would probably be so honored to, work with her students to come up with a logo for whatever you determine is the name.
Yeah, and I
Love
think
that
it
idea.
fits a lot of the competencies and whatnot that they would have in a curriculum too, and end up with a real product. Could
Sure.
be interesting.
Yeah.
So can we put that on you without even knowing what the
Absolutely.
name is to take it back? and
Yeah, oh,
see?
absolutely, sure, yeah.
That way we could still do the town of Newmarket on things
Right.
and then have like the department logo, so to
Right, so
speak,
you have
for
to
the
say
committee.
like the committee of the town of Newmarket. So it's
town.
official.
All right, well, now back to the other topic at hand. Can you say again what you wrote down for a title and a tagline?
Oh, I wrote down Newmarket Inclusion Alliance, moving the community forward.
What do you think about that?
That sounds good to me.
Sounds like your idea, and it got run to the goalpost with the rest of the team
Maybe.
here.
Sounds good.
Other discussion about that?
I like it. I like it.
This side?
Nice. So, inclusion being the word, is that the word, or is it equity? Is it Newmarket Equity Alliance, or is it, I guess, Inclusion Alliance? Is that like, because that's kind of highlighting in my, we have racial equity, inclusion, and human rights. Does inclusion feel like it encompasses all of that, or is there another word that would do that?
Part of the reason that I had these same thoughts, and I think one of the things I like about inclusion, I think inclusion and equity do kind of get used interchangeably, sort of in like general, in the day-to-day. But this idea of like the tagline of moving the community forward, I feel like part of it is about inclusion in a community, right? And so I feel like that word kind of signals something about the community being responsive to who's present in the community. And it's not that equity doesn't do that, but yeah, I don't know. There was, because I went through this too of like, which of these do we want to highlight? Because I don't think it's just about equity. I think it's also about sort of like elevating things that might be present and not as, that maybe just aren't getting as much attention in the community, or, I don't know if that makes sense, but I like the idea of thinking about it as a way to make the community a welcoming place where everybody can thrive.
I just did a quick Google, and it popped up diversity, inclusion, equity.
Oh, yeah,
and it
DEI
says
is like
diversity is often perceived about supporting inclusion. Inclusion prompts answers about creating environments conducive to feedback supporting diversity and being open. Equity was described as fairness, sameness, and valuing diversity and inclusion. So is equity the right word?
I went to a workshop and the group dynamic there ended up saying equity was very leveling the playing field. And inclusion was, the take it all, push it in, shuffle the deck, and include the whole enchilada.
Celebrating that differences in,
Right.
yeah, versus
But-
equity.
Because sometimes equity can be like, okay, we're equal, and then we just go about our business because we're equal, but now I can kind of ignore everything because we're equal.
And Patty,
Yeah, I'm coming off of a conference that I attended. I actually presented at in San Francisco because I serve on a state leadership team, New Hampshire Educator Effectiveness for Student Success. And one of the keynote speakers is Dr. Jeff Duncan Andrade, who is a professor at San Francisco State University. Amazing. But he spoke about the difference of equity and equal. And there's confusion there. And equal is we have the same thing, but that's not achieving equity. So when I think of it in terms of students and education, equitable outcomes are giving kids what they need when they need it. It's not necessarily equal. I don't need to give everybody the same thing, but some students I do need to give them this because that's achieving an equitable outcome. It's what they need. So if we think of equity within the town of Newmarket, to me that is inclusive, right? When I was a school principal, I used to always say we're an inclusive community, not an exclusive community. We include all of the students in our community, no matter who we are, right? Our race, our religion, we recognize our gender identities, and we are inclusive of that. And so I love that, to hear that word, Inclusion Alliance, and I love what you said about, it's okay that, we might have different beliefs that we're coming together for the common good of where the town wants to go. So I don't know if that helps between like equity and equal and equity, because they are two different things.
The next
Yeah.
one's justice. It goes, right, it goes equality, equity, justice, and then the fourth one in this is liberation. So as you're saying this, I'm wondering also about, racial equity, inclusion, and human rights. I imagine this committee was established in service of justice, right? Like a sort of a more just community. And so I was thinking about this idea of the difference, and if also this word, something related to justice, which might feel too legal to some people. I don't think it's not meant to connote that in the education literature, but I do think about, like, what are the goals of the committee? Is the goal equity? Is the goal inclusion? Is the goal just like a more just community? So I don't know how to think about it, but I do think it's important. I do think the language is important because it will signal things about what we value.
thinking of the initial legislation, I think it's inclusion than anything, because it's not. It's to make sure that if we see or hear of something out there, that we try to correct that or try to make recommendations. Versus, I think justice is more searching for something, or more and I don't want to use the word proactive. I'm trying to think of a better word, because it should be proactive, but it's you're right. I think it sounds more legal. Versus inclusion is working together in a situation.
To head off the legal. you hope.
Right, to head off the legal.
But I think it's also important to keep in mind that what I would assume we're trying to do is come up with a name that is going to be easily accessible to the people in the public, because we're not going to be there to explain this conversation to everyone. So what if you're John Doe on the street? What is going to make sense to you? And I think inclusion does encompass so much of the other thinking, and we are really concerned with how the public, how the community perceives this group.
Especially when you add the moving Newmarket forward.
Yeah, moving
Kind
the
of
community.
picturing like a krill in the ocean, and it's, moving all together, and there's the outliers, but they're still part of the group, and the whole thing is working in consort. Any other input about this?
I really, oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Charlotte?
I think it's difficult because right now there's a lot of like
You see when I
pushback.
Oh, yeah, I'm good.
Pushback against forms of DEI, and people talk about wokeness, almost like it's this artificial, phony thing that's politically charged. So I'd like to try to take that part out of
Yes.
it as we think about what we want this group to be. But I don't know the
Good
answer.
points.
Do you think inclusive would alienate people because of DEI? Maybe that I being in DEI, or I don't know.
I'm not sure. I'm thinking forward together or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
I think inclusion, even though it's in DEI, I don't take that as the right. It's a the more right, the charged word in that of the three.
I feel like equity is the charge.
Equity, I think it's yeah.
I think diversity.
I think inclusion is look, hey guys, we need to work together to do this versus,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, inclusion does imply working together and does imply everyone. An alliance certainly implies that we are in this together.
And to go over that, we're not gonna. We need to listen to everybody,
Right.
even those who may say of wokeness or something like that, because you gotta get them all on board as well. So I think inclusion helps that discussion.
And if we kind of go back and review the document that you first circulated in forming this committee, with the idea of you have the human resources people involved in hiring, people involved in that aspect, which is one of the core responsibilities, or the core, not responsibility, one of the core focuses of what this was kind of set out to do, if I understood it correctly.
Yeah, just look at policies and procedures and things we have in town
Yeah.
in general, and see what's missing and what we are doing right, what we're doing wrong, what we could do. So I think inclusion is.
Might be the way to go. You were going to say something at the same time as Charlotte.
I am very much just talking this to death, but I guess my only concern with the word inclusion is just because people are included in a situation or employment opportunity doesn't mean it's equitable for them. And so I think that I want to strive more than just having, this idea of, well, we've hired this amount of people. It's like, are those people thriving? Are they feeling like they have awesome opportunities in the market, which is more than just being included. But I also think from the definition that was read that inclusion entails equity. So I don't know how I'm thinking of it.
Could the tagline be modified such that, right, it's like moving the community forward? So maybe the tagline could include something about the community, like everyone thriving. I don't know. This is like
towards a more equitable community.
More equitable sounds like, well, it wasn't, and it's going to be more.
Good point.
Thriving.
Moving the.
The word, I don't know.
no, I know, but I
also,
I appreciate the point.
understand
Yeah.
that It's frustrating to talk semantics. So I just wanted to.
Mm. Contributions, yeah.
I'm going to start getting back to the same problem of the first.
Yeah,
Right.
the same.
Yeah, of trying to come up.
I mean, it sounds like this is the name. Maybe at the next meeting we come up with a mission statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you read the name again? So after all this going on, bring us back to what you jotted down, if you don't mind.
Oh, if I can read my own writing, I'd be glad to. No, I can. We are looking at calling it the Newmarket Inclusion Alliance, moving the community forward. So Newmarket Inclusion Alliance, moving the community forward.
So going with that would allow all the other conversation and ideas we had to come out and be formulated into what Steve just referred to as the mission statement or a goal statement. Okay, I understand you're non-voting members, but after all this conversation, does that feel comfortable to both of you?
Feels comfortable to me. I was just trying to come up with something else that included equity, but then we start getting back to that, you
Yeah.
know, the, the longer name, but I feel inclusion, just what it says, that it's trying to include everybody, and I hope that the feeling and the emphasis is that we want to include everybody because we want everybody to have a fair stake in equity and what's going on. I think it's tough to find one word to encompass everything, but maybe pick the best word, and to me that feels like inclusion. But.
I'm also trying to think if I'm talking to a neighbor, somebody, at the grocery store. I've got this committee I'm on in town. Newmarket Inclusion Alliance is something that rolls off the tongue easily. I can have it in a conversation. And I would assume that our goal is also to get the work of this committee out. So that, that's just something that's easy to remember.
And I also think that, when we introduce that, we can expound on that. This is the name, and I know the name is very important, but then that would be our opportunity to explain further what it's about.
Yeah, that's when we jump into the elevator speech.
And let's not forget the picture being worth 1,000 words, because we're depending on the
Right.
school piece of it to have a logo
Oh,
that
and
could
t-shirts.
symbolize some of these other ideas.
Even looking at the legal name, everybody else uses the same kind of, same terminology, but it shouldn't just be racial equity.
No, it should be
Equity.
equity, it should be accessibility for
Right.
those with differing abilities. It should be,
I think the reason, though, that racial's included and is often included is because that is a group, people are oppressed on race,
Right.
right? And so it needs that sort of like very specific focus, but right, it should include all human, and we do have human rights.
Right.
So that's, yeah. But I do just want to name that I think it's important to keep race as part of it because that's such a means by which people are marginalized. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've had, like ADA has been Solar since
91,
91, and we're still not complete on, ADA access in many areas.
Oh, yeah.
So at this point, do we go formal here and take a motion to settle on the name so that Annette would still have an idea of what else is involved in this with working with the graphics, and then with all these,
and that is the art teacher?
I'm sorry, the art
Yeah.
teacher, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Blake is her
Blake.
last name,
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Oh. I don't know if I actually, whether naming her in the minutes is somebody who's being discussed and we haven't even asked her if she wants to do it.
That's the best way to get
I'll
someone
talk
to
to
do
her.
it.
I'll talk.
We're gonna put it in the official record and it will be there. I won't do that, I just would like to know who will.
I think the Inclusion Alliance sounds really good, and moving the community forward. Because there's no, nothing jumps out as you as being that sort of woke thing that people are.
Yeah. And, and moving the community forward implies action, it implies we're gonna be doing something active, it's not a passive
I
group.
like that.
Yeah, the ing form of the verb, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
It's,
We're
listen,
moving.
it's not a stuffy committee.
we're not stuck, no, we're definitely
No.
not stuck. That's why I
No.
want a
All
t-shirt.
right, I'll make the motion.
There you go.
So I make a motion, my name is Vicky Burns.
Thank you.
I'll officially make the motion to name the Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Human Rights Committee, the Newmarket Inclusion Alliance.
I'll
Second that. You did that? Okay. All right, so, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose or abstaining? That looks unanimous.
Unanimous.
There. We did something as a group for the first time there. That's wonderful.
We're
Good, good,
moving
good.
forward.
We are moving forward.
We-
Good, and now you have everything you would need to take the idea back to the school side, I hope. Nice. Good.
Fantastic.
Mission statements. I have heard that mission statements should cover things like who are we, what do we do, and why do we do it better than anybody else. So as we noodle on that, coming up to our next meeting, maybe those are the things that we should suggest.
Brainstorm.
So who are we, what do we do, and why do we do it better than anybody else? Or something along those lines.
From any past work with any other groups or towns, do you have some kind of like he just summarized, do you have any kind of template-y kind of a thing, or any kind of something left over from a workshop
look.
that talks about this? Maybe look and see,
Yeah.
and that could be helpful.
Yep.
Yeah, the who are we and what's the thing
Yeah.
is the
The elevator
gist of it.
pitch.
Yep.
Yeah, somebody over here said the elevator pitch,
Elevator
yeah.
pitch, yeah.
So that can be a agenda item already for next month. Whew, busy.
Well, I work for Pine Street Inn, which is,
Oh, yeah.
Boston's largest homeless service agency. And, one of the things that stuck with me is that part of our motto is dignity and respect. And that's how we treated our, unhoused men and women who lived in our shelters or lived in our housing. And it, I don't know, it just stuck with me, dignity and respect, period.
Yeah.
Okay, the next item listed on here is short-term items to consider, with land acknowledgement recognition statements being something that this group could talk about and consider. Are people familiar with what this means? Have you seen some in other towns? Go for it, Steve. Thank
I've
you.
been thinking about it a lot because I knew it was going to come at some point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And my biggest concern, and that you see it with the same with the Pledge of Allegiance. It's not. It becomes just a action in a meeting versus an actual thought during a meeting. I mean, the number of people you actually ask, okay, what are you saying when you say the Pledge of Allegiance? And to the people who like get upset when somebody doesn't say it, and it's like, there's reasons why people do and don't. You just don't want it to be an assumed part of a meeting, like the reading of something. I always was wondering, is it better to, if you want to do a land acknowledgement, go with something permanent, something that says the history, so people who aren't at the meeting can also understand that it was going on, what was going on, like a statement or something, because that's my only, I always said that, I'm like, yeah, you know what, for year one, everyone's going to pay attention, but year 2 plus, it's going to get watered down and just going to be part of as much as a roll call or an adjournment, it just gets in there like a Pledge of Allegiance. That was my only thing. My only concern ever with something like that at the beginning.
Can I respond to this? I've been thinking about this a lot because, so I work at Boston University for those that I have not met, and we as my college within the university, we've talked about this a lot over the last couple of years, and spoken with Indigenous people to ask, like, is this something that we should be doing? What is this, right? What is this accomplishing? And I think to some extent, Steve, what you're saying is right. It's like, what is the impact of that statement? And we've kind of landed as a college on if you are going to adopt a land acknowledgement, it has to be the very beginning of a whole plan of action, right? Because otherwise, all you're doing is acknowledging unceded land, and that doesn't really help anyone. But I do think that acknowledgement is obviously important, but the thing that I think has been repeated is acknowledging that this was native land doesn't help Native people, but education, outreach, and about, like you just said, what is the history? Like how are we all connected to this? So I'm not opposed to doing a land acknowledgement. I think it's a beautiful thing to do, but I would love it to be step one, right? And maybe even in the land acknowledgement, articulating how we as a committee recognize that that's sort of step one, and other things that we could do that would not only be maybe a greater impact, but a more sustained impact, other than like, yes, we all said this in the meeting and then moved on with our lives.
And that was what I was thinking.
Yeah.
It's not, if you put a permanent, if you put up, like, I'm throwing this out there, it's like a plaque
Yeah.
that has the information and says what it was, you're going to get the person who walks into town hall or wherever they are and reading it versus the very small number of people who read it, who watch a meeting, or see it at some point. I think you have a bigger impact acknowledging it, not by doing it at a meeting.
I have also had a little, like, I'm not an expert on it at all. high school I worked at, I was in the process of writing it, and I worked with Denise and Paul Pulio, who are in the I wrote it down, Indigenous New Hampshire Collective of UNH. And so I, went back and forth with them to get their input on it, and they really pushed for it actually being an action statement.
Yeah.
So you do acknowledge the history, but it is an action statement. It is not just something you repeat, but it is like, this is how, in moving forward, we will keep this in mind and help promote Indigenous culture, because too often it's about, the ceded land is very important, but people are still here, they're still living, and they, what are those next steps, like you were saying. So even though I like the permanent idea, it's also a dynamic thing that you go back to and kind of readjust as you are making those actions, implementing those actions.
And I can tell you, I was watching a meeting today for another community, and the acting mayor just literally read a piece of paper like this, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, you know what? Nobody pays attention to that.
Right.
So it's not doing what the purpose is. That's why I think that's not beneficial.
It's interesting, I didn't take the word statement to be a physical statement.
Yeah. Well, that's
I
what's
took it-
common right now is
Right.
everybody starts a meeting. by
That is
saying-
what's going on,
Right.
exactly. I don't want to speak for the Conservation Commission, but I'm on the Conservation Commission. And I was picturing where they have kiosks that talk about, here's the whippoorwill nest and this, that, and the other thing, to have, there can be a written thing there, because we acknowledge this is bought in so-and-so by the so-and-so family or donated by so-and-so. But it could also be really an easy way to keep up with things and have a QR code. So if you want to know more about this, bing, bing, and there we can have statements, because we are lucky to have exhibits at our own historical society here, and the UNH group so nearby and whatnot. So we could have some things that could come up through that mechanism. So there's a visual, and then the action of incumbent upon people who are interested, and you hope by putting it in enough places, more and more people are exposed to that interest.
Yeah, like I said, sometimes you also, when somebody reads it monotone,
Oh, yeah.
it's almost more of a slap in the face.
Oh yeah, it's
It's like, well, I don't care,
not
but I have to
good.
read this.
Literally
Yeah.
the least.
Yeah,
you could do,
exactly. That's why I was like, I'd rather not go down that route.
Yeah.
But I will say that Denise and Paul did support writing
Yeah.
land acknowledgement statements, because I was, seeing some pushback in those too, and I did ask them. And they are the head speakers for the Abenaki, New Hampshire, so not that there isn't a variety of opinions on that, but I just will say that that was something that they said, yes, we think you should do that, but it needs to be action and not just talking about the past,
Yeah.
because we are the future as well.
Right.
I'm wondering if it could behoove us to see if they could come as guests to a meeting of ours at some month in the quasi-near future and kind of give an overview. And that would give people who are in the audience or people who are at home watching the idea of here's what's going on, so they have a chance to weigh in on it a little bit too.
I like that.
And they do a lot of workshops and outreach kind of programs, so it could be interesting to see if they could come and talk to us or Zoom in for us from wherever they are for 10 or 15 minutes and kind of be the, a backbone kind of a place to work from. Does that seem believable? Charlotte, yeah.
Sure, we could also look at the experience in Durham, New Hampshire.
Sure.
About the post office murals that showed Native Americans and not in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
How that was resolved
And how that was resolved would be
Yes,
interesting.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're so close.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that they talked about the Oyster River Massacre, and
Mm-hmm.
that had sort of like a really just not a flattering picture of the Native Americans who had
Mm-hmm.
owned the land there.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to wonder if any of that extended to Newmarket since we're so close.
Mm-hmm. Do you suppose you could take the task of talking with your colleague in Durham
Sure, I'll talk to you.
and ask about, and congratulate him on winning a photo for the high rising
Yes,
water?
the water.
Yes. But see if he has an idea of who might be able to come and give us that kind of overview and
Sure.
that kind of a presentation. So there's a couple of months of input we could get without a hasty, quick thing.
I will say the INHCC website also has a ton of land recognition statements. They've put a lot of energy into educating through their website. So, yeah, INHCC, Indigenous New Hampshire Collaborative Collective. Can I look and just make sure is that
Yeah,
website correct?
I think that's probably even the better group to talk
Yeah.
to.
Indigenous New
Mhm.
Hampshire.
And I can reach out, I can reach out.
Collaborative
I don't,
Commission?
so I will say,
Let's
I
look it
feel a little obligation not to ask Denise and Paul to do free labor.
Free labor, yeah.
Yeah.
No free labor.
But I know that I'm happy if that is within my purview to reach out to the Collaborative Collective and ask.
Collaborative Collective.
That'd be
which is
wonderful.
college
Okay.
students. Okay.
Yeah, that would be,
I'm sorry, it's indigenousnh.com.
Indigenous.
Yeah, I think now that we have, our committee has a name, you could say, this committee is looking forward to.
Well, that's just it, we're having, you know, the Newmarket
reach out
Inclusion
to them.
Alliance is looking forward to having the Collaborative Collective
Should I invite them to the next meeting or?
See their availability.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think it would be problematic for the next one. That might be too soon for the next one. So far, we don't have a lot of people that are, filling up our calendar to be guest speakers, so give them first dibs. And then we could map around that a little bit to see what else we want to have.
and address something that once again, I understand the intent of the statement. It's not something that I have explored a lot and would like to learn something more about. Of course, I don't think I'm going to be in state at the next
The
meeting. but-
website has a whole, like, if you want to craft your own land acknowledgement, the one that we just wrote down.
Yeah.
So if you I was going to say that we could all check it out during the interim.
Okay.
They have their own, and then they have examples from the Portsmouth Public Library, from UNH, from Exeter Historical Society.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it'll give you a nice introduction.
Did everybody get the Indigenous New Hampshire?
Yep.
Okay.
Indigenous New Hampshire Collaborative Collective, indigenoush.com.
Okay.
So if I'm getting emails about this, how do I make sure that I'm not, if I'm it's okay?
You can do it, yeah, just
And then I
forward
can
it.
email you
Yep.
the information of their availability and all that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And Amy is going to check
And it sounds like you have some experience and interest in this. If you had other websites or groups, it could be interesting for you just to do what's the word I'm looking for, like a bibliography or whatever, like a little list of things
Sure.
and get it to Steve so we can review them.
Okay.
places to look, yeah.
And I would welcome anything
Yes, I'm happy
on
to
your
help.
end
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well,
yeah.
because it sounds like you
But you're
have,
so connected locally, and that's what
I'm
I'm like.
very local and very like specific.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
So
Yeah.
anything
Yeah,
from
we can connect.
But
Yes.
that's perfect.
Yeah,
That's-
it's funny, they bold, and put in bold exactly what we said, any land acknowledgement has to be accompanied by actions, and not a token or
Yeah.
symbolic gesture.
Right,
Yeah.
yes, and I absolutely agree with you, Steve, that I have heard the statements too, and you look around the room and no one's listening.
All right,
Because the meeting didn't start yet. It's just that guy reading that thing.
Okay, now we're gonna do a bunch of that.
Right.
Now we'll do the- yeah.
And then we have our own historical society, the Newmarket Historical Society, that could be a resource for us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, does that sound like we've got some homework for people to look at themselves? We'll hear back from you because you'll get some information back to Steve about when they might be available to come talk to us in the next couple of next month or in the next couple of months.
And then we'll get some sources.
And some resources, maybe. Anything else from anybody else on that aspect of our agenda tonight?
It's direction, we're going, there's a plan. I like that.
Yeah. The next item here is professional audit of the town's current status with DEI, human rights, and human resources ideas. That came up at our very first meeting. You mentioned that in passing, and now it's a
Yeah.
real thing on your plate.
well, I need to look at the entire personnel plan,
Yeah.
not just this portion of it, because we need a top to bottom revision, which I would definitely include this.
Okay.
So it's not it'd be part of it, not a
Good, yep.
standalone, because we have not done the top to bottom revision since I've been here, and I've been here 10 years.
Oh, really?
So,
Oh.
yeah, just because it costs the staffing, but we now are getting up to stuff, so. It used to be one of those ones that one of our insurance carriers did it for free for everybody, and
Oh.
they stopped doing it,
Oh,
so.
probably other stuff
Yeah,
came aboard.
yeah. But that's on my radar to update it.
And
Good.
resources from New Hampshire Municipal Association?
That was the insurance company. The LGC is the one that stopped doing it. They're not here. Primex, they both did it, so, yeah. They don't have the resources any longer.
Okay, so that stays floating in the.
Yeah, it's
let's
on the
see here.
radar.
On the radar, okay. All right. And the superintendent had mentioned casually when we were tossing out ideas and meeting each other for the first time, the interest in Columbus Day and the renaming to be Indigenous Peoples' Day and Columbus Day. And I want to say kudos to Steve. I'll let you address this, but
Already
when-
done.
Already done. So when I was saying, some things to put on the agenda, you could have knocked me over with a feather when he wrote back and said,
Already done. And not only that, but we
Already.
immediately, when it became federal law, the town adopted Juneteenth as well.
Nice.
So
Good
we have it as
job.
a holiday in June, town closed, so fall and everything.
I do think we could do a little, I don't know who the "we"
And
is here,
and
I'm
we've
saying,
changed to Indigenous Peoples' Day?
It's a hyphen, Indigenous,
Oh, it's actually hyphenated?
it is
It's not-
hyphenated.
Indigenous Peoples in Columbus Day.
Oh.
It's
More-
inclusive.
I'll ask about that later.
Yes.
Is it
I like-
inclusive?
I live Italian heritage and I have no problem using Columbus.
Well,
Yeah.
it's really interesting because we were
Well, I'm on
talking
TV,
about,
I shouldn't say that, should I?
Indigenous Peoples' Day, and one of our members of the legislature thought, what about Italian Heritage Month? I'm like, for October, I'm like, huh?
I thought you might have some insights from Concord for us.
Yeah.
I believe that Columbus sailed for Spain, but that's just the history nerd in me. I don't want to, I'm sorry if I'm inflaming.
Yeah.
guys,
But we have to be happy with the steps we're taking.
Right.
Or we ought to be happy with the steps we're taking. That said, after you did that, I went ferreting around the internet, and it's not referred to that way in every place that it could
Oh.
be. So for
We'll double
instance, the
check.
school calendar is sometime, I know it's those
Yeah.
little squares, if you type everything, it'll be like 1 week, we'll have a column this long, but it's something we could kind of work on to see that is, people in town understand that that's how we refer to this.
Yeah, I think the next step, we would just share that with the school board.
Yeah.
So that the school board could approve that, but typically, yes, there are other little blocks, but then over on the side, written out, explains the holidays, and that's where we could write it out completely. Because just in the blocks, I think it's just designated as like a no school day in X or something, and then on the right, it gives the actual date and why. So to give that recognition. that it just
So you can carry that message back
Yep.
as well?
I got it, right now.
Thank you.
I don't know if anybody followed the story in Durham when they were trying to change the name. So it's not something that will not create controversy.
Sure.
Well, the name got changed at an October meeting in 2018.
Yeah, you did it a long time
Yeah, it was a
ago.
few years ago,
okay.
so hopefully
Oh, so before we knew it was supposed to be controversial.
And it was about the same time we put in the resolution about bathrooms.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yep.
So we did two, yeah, it was a lot, I had to look up I still looking up the name of the resolution that we did it, it was so long ago.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
so those are the main items that we had down for this agenda. I'm wondering if there are things now in the free-form way that we enjoy each other's company here. Is there some other things that we would like to talk about, or things that we would like to put on the radar to tackle moving forward? Or what could be our next, I'm thrilled that these couple of near-term to-dos are being worked upon. What are some things that could be coming up, given that the item 3 here, the professional audit, is an ongoing and much longer and more deep-seated thing that's really our encouragement and support to Steve for on the town side, but what are some other things that we think of, or places, or things we might want to consider or think or do with this committee as far as visibility in the town and awareness that people even know this is a thing, a new thing, and that we're here, and volunteering time. It's a big deal to volunteer time for any activity in town.
I like the idea of a mission statement. I think that really will guide us in a lot of our decisions.
I know at work, I refer to our mission statement regularly, and it keeps me focused.
Yeah,
So I do
sometimes it
think-
narrows things, it gets you back to the,
I do think mission statements are valuable. As long as they reflect what the committee is working on, and they
Is
don't
there
have to
a
be.
place for us to discuss contemporary issues such as the incidents of religious hatred that happened over in
Portsmouth?
in
I-
the
I-
past?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Horrendous. I don't know what our role could be, but
I don't either, but I want to
Watch
go
how
over
it
with a
rolls
scrub
out.
brush and a bucket.
and then maybe offer support or collaboration.
My other thought would be this group could encourage the historical society, the library to offer programming.
Yeah.
That also.
You know, historical society, the history of Newmarket, good and bad. And, you know, maybe the library could encourage them to have speakers or lectures on different topics.
right, the library can access quite easily the New Hampshire Humanities
Yeah.
Council
Right.
has those trunk shows, Library and Historical Society. I'm wondering, when Charlotte brought up contemporary issues and the graffiti and whatnot in Portsmouth, if there are times that there are things that you might be able to share with us about, in a legal way and a safe way to all the people involved, if it was a crime that was committed, but things or trends that we could help with or support or be aware of.
Well, that particular incident seems to be one that has been popping up in several communities, not just here in New Hampshire, but like all over the state, in Mass as well, some in Maine as well. I think people might be surprised, but we've had some similar incidents, but not exactly the same here in town, where people have been placing stickers downtown that align with different groups that I think everybody would consider, you know, a hate group, or at least it was very concerning to a lot of people. It's a difficult thing to deal with, in the sense that you have to have a measured response. This particular group that was in Portsmouth the other night is one that is looking to start a fight or draw attention to themselves. So you want to support people, you want to, show that this is not acceptable, but you also don't want to draw more attention and give them the opportunity to, for example, a few people said, should we have a protest or something, and I would discourage that, because they want that. They want to show up and then create a bigger scene. But this seems to be popping up in different places, and in these small pockets, it's very difficult initially to figure out what's going on and who these people are. But I know that law enforcement is sharing that information and working diligently to try and figure out who they are. But to say it's not happening everywhere, and that's not a great answer, but it is happening all over the place, and I think more frequently than we see on the news.
Anti-Semitism it's hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that it's on the rise again. It just is very difficult. I don't get
I
it.
think people not being able to understand and be compassionate to other people is on the rise. It's like, I was at a sporting event recently, and some of the stuff that was being bantered around in the stands, I was like, it was, I don't know, people feel like sometimes they have a blank check to say whatever they want, and that it's okay. But that's not everybody. That it's like small pockets. But anyway, I feel like we got to get back to, in this group, I think is a good place where we're working towards like having people, it's okay to accept other people's ideas even if you don't agree. It's okay to disagree but still be civil to each other, and I think that's something that, this group is moving towards, I would hope.
When you mentioned contemporary, thank you for that. When you mentioned contemporary issues, did you have a tangible in mind? I appreciate what the chief just said, and I'm thinking like, oh, could it be almost a standing item on the on the agenda, so to speak, or did you have something else in mind about what we could do with contemporary issues?
I was in a place where, when we talked about this, when we discussed this, when we talked about what happened, we
Yeah.
talked about prevention.
Yeah.
We talked about how we would deal with that if it happened in Newmarket.
Yeah, how would we deal with if? That doesn't give the form that you were talking about the sympathetic group saying we want to make a protest against bad graffiti. Talk about what would we do if, is that comfortable, or does that fit the?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly comfortable talking about any of those things. You know, I feel comfortable talking about any of these issues. I certainly think it's worthy of discussion in coming up with ideas. I don't know that I'll always be able to answer every question or speak specifically about.
And I think to add to that is the discussion of, say if we were to get a protest and a counter-protest, why do we have to let them? And explain that, because that's the number one thing, I think one of the big things you hear too is like, when we say that somebody wants to do a protest, if one wants to do somebody wants to do a protest, you also have to allow a counter-protest. So that's the discussion that I think the general public needs to hear. And I think it's good to hear. I mean, it's good to hear that as well.
I think people protest when they don't feel like enough action is being taken, right? So maybe if there's concern about protest, counter-protest, then, you know, the thing that this group can do is set action items that make people feel safe and that make people feel like, in spite of events like what just happened in Portsmouth, you know, there's steps that their community is taking to, not that, I mean, I don't think you can prevent, I mean, certainly, I don't know, you can speak to this, I don't know how much you can prevent when there's so much rhetoric that is just inflammatory, but I think there's things that we can do to make our community feel safer, right? And as Charlotte's saying, talk about it, right? I was just sitting here wondering, this is a very separate thing, but does Newmarket do a Pride event in June?
No.
Portsmouth does.
Portsmouth does, and I think
Portsmouth
there's
and
like,
Portsmouth.
Rochester does one in
Yeah.
August, September.
not in June,
No.
during
And the
Pride
Portsmouth
Month.
Pride
Yeah.
event is very inclusive.
Yes.
And I think that's why
Yes.
Portsmouth is sort of more of a
Yes,
seacoast.
yeah,
Seacoast,
yeah.
So they'd rather.
But could there be like satellite things during June? Like, I don't know, I'm thinking about
we do,
yeah.
I mean, I know it's nothing, we do fly, during the month, we put the flag up,
Yeah.
inclusion flag.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
important.
know the last Pride, the Newmarket Community Church had a group that
Yeah.
was present at the Pride Parade.
And
Yeah, that's great.
quite often we get, why is it downtown and not at town hall? We don't own the flag pole in front of town hall.
That's something for people to know.
Seriously?
It's owned by the Archdiocese of Manchester. We don't own the parking lot around town hall. It's owned by the Archdiocese of Manchester. We own the parking lot in the back. That's why part of the email tonight was, hey guys, you gotta park somewhere else. That's Wednesday.
I guess I have
We
to
own the
check
footprint
my
of the
email
building.
before I leave work.
This feels like the Newmarket trivia study group right here, you know?
Yeah, really.
But hey, we do get that. I mean, we get questions on why can't you do stuff there, because it's
Yeah.
not our law.
It's not the law.
Yeah.
That's just fascinating.
Does the school, could you mind, or are you familiar with what the school might be doing in June for Pride Month? I feel like there's,
I'm not off the top of my head.
that's okay,
It's my
not to put
first
you on the
year.
spot, yeah.
Well, Tanya, but we certainly, I'll add it to my notes.
And happy to look into that
Yeah.
to see what happens during June.
Yeah, that could be interesting for us to know too, so that people are asking us questions, or as we,
Yeah, when I think about like who are the groups that are targeted right now, right? And so there's so much anti-Semitism, there's so much anti-LGBTQ rhetoric. I mean, honestly, I feel like every group is targeted right now. So like if we could find ways to make our community sort of, it's expressions of support through programming and yeah.
Can I just shout, I'm sorry, can I just shout out the play, the school play?
Oh.
Was amazing and so well done and so talented, and I was so impressed coming from a school district that they tackled some issues of LGBTQ and identity
cool.
and things like that. I was walked out of there so proud of what Newmarket does for our kids and all kids, and it was just, I just want to, it was awesome.
Thank you for
And
that.
I'm
Yeah.
glad that like, I don't know if the central office had to approve it or anything, but I just think that was fabulous.
That was to rectify enough late.
It was.
Oh, our very own.
And like the sets were amazing, but yeah.
Amazing.
I think too, it speaks to the bravery of our students as well, the student actors, to be a part of a performance that was really quite courageous, and they did a great job. Yeah, really proud.
It's a sliver of something, but thinking again about the school side and that play and what might they do in June or whatnot, or what might they have on the horizon they want to do. They could be exploring grant out opportunities, and to know that our group could be a letter of support could be interesting in a grant option. They could say, and my town's Newmarket Inclusion Alliance Committee could draft a letter of support if they had a grant opportunity. Or an artist in residence opportunity that was going to feature that kind of a topic, to know that we could be supportive. Sometimes a letter, sometimes grants ask for what letters of support can you offer.
Can this group, now that you just said that, I have no idea what this group's allowed to do in terms of, so Steve's here. Can this group invite people in the community to suggest programming? Can we have, like when you just said, you know, we could go out and say there's if you find a grant opportunity, come to us, we can write a letter of support. Could we also say, if you see an opportunity that you're not quite sure even how to create that programming, could we almost take like, not proposals per se, but yeah, I don't know.
It could sort of be a clearinghouse, but we can't, as a government entity, again, if you do one, we have to do.
Okay, that's kind of what I was wondering. You can't. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
And I'm assuming that there is not a budget for us to do any.
No, there's no budget.
There's no.
Let me put that out. There is no budget.
Yeah, it is an important
The other
thing.
committees I get asked, do I have a budget?
No. And I was quite sure that was the
Yeah.
answer, which is why I asked the question, but I think
Yeah.
it's important to put that on the table and
Right.
say, you know, whatever we, you know, decide to do, we are going to have to figure out how to do it on our own. Possibly. You do?
Yes, I do.
Are we gonna have a car wash?
I think so. I think so. So, I know that the mural on Elm Street is going to be redone.
Oh.
And it would be great if we could get, you know, some of the high school kids and, you know, various groups to work on that mural and make sure that it's inclusive. You know?
This is why I'm here as the clearinghouse. The Arts Commission is working on that.
Okay.
The other issue is the wall is not a public property. That is owned by the Chimberg Company.
Oh, okay.
So, who's working with the Arts Commission to do it?
Yeah.
So, I'm not overly worried. But those are the kind of things that I'm here for. It's like, to burst the bubble once in a while, so you guys can't do it, yeah.
There's no need for us to replicate somebody else's work.
Absolutely.
And if there's a commission that's working on it, I'm sure we can offer some suggestions.
That's
Exactly.
interesting.
And the Pocket Park by Johnny Boston,
Yeah.
that's another thing that the Arts and Tour, our ACT is
Yeah.
working on, but taking Charlotte's idea, saying, oh, we'd like to see something in there represented. So when they have the RFP for artists, they could include something like
And
that.
correct me if I'm wrong, they're looking at doing revolving.
Yeah,
So-
that's.
Like installation.
To be, yes.
Yeah.
So you'd be able to do that versus just have, and especially at the library, I think that's the big one they're looking for.
Yeah,
There's those three that look like windows.
the indented places
Right.
there could be.
Were we, not we, was someone fundraising, because I feel like I donated to it, to make a Wentworth Chiswell monument?
Yes.
Is that still
So-
in the works?
That's a,
Yes.
there we go, there you go.
So what it is, yes, there's a group to try to have a Wentworth Cheswell monument or statue. The number one thing they kept looking for was land.
Okay.
So I said, hey, we've got a park that we want to redo, which is they refer to as the Ira Park. That's the two structures right near the Congregational Church, the community church. I'm sorry, community church. Those two structures are rotting, so we're taking them down, and we also needed. We were looking at other ideas for the park. We had the original designer who was in town, Robbie Woodburn, is volunteering, donating to, and did present a redesign. We're actually looking for a location for that there, as well as a veterans memorial in the back of the park to open that up. as well as that was the location of the original town hall. They had burnt down in the 80s to somehow acknowledge that's what that was there as well. I've seen the design, shared it with the council, we're just trying to work. So yes, it is moving forward.
Nice.
That's
Very nice.
interesting because Wentworth Cheswell was a veteran.
Yeah, see? Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, man, it's a color in our Venn diagram.
Yeah.
all kind of-
Yeah, he was a town official, so.
Oh, perfect.
Get them all there.
Yeah, that's significant. Thanks for bringing
And
that
it was
up.
of African-American heritage.
Right, for those who don't know, Newmarket is the town that elected the first African American to public office in the United States.
There's a great segment on Chronicle.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was, yeah, yeah,
That.
that's come up.
Yeah, Wentworth Treswell as well.
Our own Charlotte was in that segment.
Oh, it was. I sponsored a bill last year to have a portrait of Wentworth Cheswell in the State House, and it failed because we don't have any true likenesses of Wentworth Cheswell.
That is the one thing I've heard too.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, yeah.
And I have people asking me, like other reps ask me every day, what's going on with the Cheswell portrait? And I said, it's not going to happen. We don't have a likeness of him.
We don't know what he looked
We need a true likeness.
For a portrait, yeah. So thank you for bringing up contemporary issues. That
Oh, what-
brought us to lots of good discussion
Sure.
here just now. Any other ideas for things we could have moving forward, or short-term, or items for the agenda next time? And feel free, both of you, to pop up with something here if you want us to include. I love it when I see you jiggle the paper a little bit. That means, oh, he's about to talk. Oh,
Tapped out.
okay. Well, you've done good by bringing us the name of this.
Heard the idea for a name, that was,
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
yeah, you can rest on that,
At least
Laurel.
I can include something.
you know, that was.
We do have a student representative who is interested. I'm forwarding that to the superintendent
Okay.
to vet it on their side of the aisle before the council takes any action.
If we do think of any topics for the next meeting, is it a week ahead that we need to have them in by?
We don't have a rule,
I don't know. if
so.
we'll- Okay.
Oh, this
But
is.
prefer that so we can get
Prefer a week
it,
ahead to get
yeah,
organized?
so we can get an
Okay,
agenda.
Do we have a date?
We did settle on the fourth Wednesday,
So
so
the fourth.
that'll be March 22nd. And there's a standing location for here for 6 o'clock.
There is a very good chance that I'm going to be traveling back from Missouri on the 22nd. So if somebody else would be willing to take, I don't know whether to call them
Minutes.
minutes,
Minutes.
notes.
I can do it.
Well, that's good. And when I come in with a broken hand the next time.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for volunteering for that.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah,
Super
if I'm
helpful.
back, it'll be, but
Okay.
that's,
Super helpful. So that seems to be a lot for an hour and 2 minutes.
yeah, no,
Um,
we, very impressive.
Yeah, it's fun to have ideas back and forth and land on something, and so I think a big thing, and probably it'll be a bit time-consuming for our next meeting, we should allocate ample time for the mission statement work, which I don't expect to be done next meeting by any means, although you never know, it could just be the stars align and we all say that's it, but,
And if I have any thoughts, Chris, I'll email you, just in anticipation that I won't be here.
sure,
Um,
sure. And then I can share that, and I did share before you walked in that you had an idea for the naming group, naming the committee, naming the committee,
Yeah,
so
it was
I
659.
retained that from last time. So share what you come up with in your anticipated. I'm doing this like you broke your hand. You're doing Missouri.
Question for Steve.
Yes.
Have we hired a library director yet?
My understanding is they're very close, if not, they already did it.
Oh, that's
I have
great.
not met the individual.
And that's great, because that person would be a resource for this
Absolutely.
community. And I'm thinking
Mm-hmm.
book club,
Oh, yeah.
because the librarian can order books from the state library to do a book club, so that could be a nice community.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
would,
Yeah, we
yes.
could do some, yeah.
A great way for the new librarian to meet people too and become
Yes.
really involved. I'm liking that. And the Historical Society offering programs was something that popped up. I think after we find out when, I'm gonna say Denise, like I know her. I don't know her, but I don't know how to really pronounce Pulio, so, okay. After we find out from you when they could be available, I think we should then contact the Historical Society and see if they wanted to do something at one of our monthly meetings as well.
P-O-U-L-I-O-T?
P-O-U-L-I, I believe so.
Yes,
Yeah.
you were correct.
Any other?
She's the Historical Society.
Do we have a motion to, anything else, Steve?
No,
Do you have something
but the
else?
chair can just adjourn the meeting if there's
Oh, I
no
can just
objection.
adjourn the meeting. I'm not detecting objection. And once the chief puts that elastic and thwacks it on that hook,
Adjourn at 7:06 PM.
thank you.
Love it.
Thank you
All
for
right.
coming, and thank you for being
So
here
just so I
and
go, Amy
taking
and
assignments
Nikki
to
and
bring back to
Charlotte
us. Thank you.
And Adrian?
Andrea,
Andrea,
yes.
I beg your
No, that's
pardon.
okay. Yeah,
We're
got
on,
it.
we're done. All right.
And Stacy.
No, I'm Amy.
You're Amy, you're Stacy.
Yeah, I'm Stacy.